Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Ari Deutscher. This is Rabbi Klein. We're from the Yeshivas Nefesh Talmud. My friend Tzvi Broker, who's working for Tzomit, was telling me about the great work he does in career counseling. Since 2009, Tzomit has been counseling and providing career services tailored for the Frum community, and they offer career counseling and job training programs, giving the necessary tools to find employment. Their expertise is in the Israeli educational system, which enables Olim to make educated decisions when planning their children's education and future. Us, the Nefesh Talmud, being very involved in educating the Anglo community, we felt there was like a dual purpose here, and we felt that it would be a good service to provide.
I'd like to start with a story. The story was told by the story is told by the Ben Ish Chai, and it could be found in his commentary on Masechtas Brachos. Sometimes listening to the exact words of a story it's not always so exciting. So I'm going to make it sound very exciting, but at the same time, the words are so beautiful that I'm forced to read some of them inside. So the story of the Ben Ish Chai. So he tells a story of a rich man. He says that there was a ma'isa of an ashir echad, shehaya lo ben yachid. There's a rich person that had one son. V'sheniya ben yudcha shana, when he turned 18 years old, before he would marry him off. Ratza aviv l'lamdoi melacha. So he wanted to teach him a trade. So it happened to be the trade that this father taught his son was to be a tzarif, and the beso tzarif echad guman gadol, right, the finest out there, right, his products were sold, right, for the most amount of money. And when he approached his son to tell him about his proposition, we have a lot of money, right? What are you doing this to me for? They're always coming to our table, you're always feeding them. So what do you want from me? What are you trying to teach me something? So this is what he said. So the father didn't listen to him. And the father said to him, Kach hiritzaini, and I want you to go and I want you to learn a malacha, v'yamayin ben. And the son didn't listen. And it came to such a point that the Ben Ish Chai says that the father was required to bribe his son. And each day that he would bring this person to teach him a malacha, he would give him some money. And kach kara, that was the story. He brought someone, he taught him. But the Ben Ish Chai says it didn't just end there. But rather he said that every day that he would teach him, the father's a shaita. Why is he wasting his money? What is he doing? What is he bothering? Why is he wasting his money? So what happened? So he married him off. The father died. So what did the son do? So he went to the Oitzar Mammon Shala Aviv. And Yiftach Atevos Maleim Tzoris Zehuvim. He brought it to his cheder, and his wife was there. And he would use that money. But what happened? Eventually the money ran out. So the son then went and he remembered that which he learned. And he learned the malacha. And it says over here, right, that he went back to this cheder, and the son went back and he opened up these kelim with a great joy. Because now he would be able to be misparnis himself. He blessed his father. And he would bless his father. And his wife, who had heard this, his Ishto, Hayagam Kenimai, Vishama Devarav Acharkach Yashav, he sat down with him later on, right? She saw that he would sit down, every single time he would take his hammer and he would smash. Every single time he would say, Allah Aviv. This was like a kavani, and every single time he was smashing his hammer. She went over to her husband with a pliya gedola and said, I have a big pliya gedola on you, I have a big question. Because he says, Be'eshit nichnas le oitzer mamoin, right? That when you went and you got all the money that your father left for you, I didn't hear you blessing your father. But now, and you're working hard, and you're going to the cheder and you're working. So now every single time you're blessing your father. What's the pshat? She asked her husband that question. So listen to what the husband said. So this is what the husband told the wife. So she said, So he said, So when I was little, my father came to teach me a trade. To bribe me b'mammon ad shelamadati b'chol yom, hayisi choshev v'libi sheshtus haisazu b'davar zeh. To the might tzarech. What do I need this for? And every single day I'd be mavazim inside of my lev. V'ata shenefach hagalgal. And now that I don't have any money left, and the only thing I have left is malacha that my father taught me. Ata yadati she'avi chacham haya, v'toiva gedoyla asa imi, b'libon ha-malacha. Kizuhi tamil the keren kayam nisparnis mimena, v'lulei haya yisem eisim b'rav. And then he goes on to say, and therefore, every single time I work in it, I had to be mishabeach my father. For all those times that every time I was learning my malacha, I'd be mavaz my father. Kachayim, says the Ben Ish Chai. So, I'm opening with this story because I think that this story, this amazing story, really captures why all of us are here tonight. You know, in the words of the Mishnah at the end of Kedushin, Amar Rabbi Meir says, "L'olam yilamed adam esbuna skala v'nekia, v'yisbala l'misha ha'isher v'nachasim shaloi, she'ena umnus she'en ba'anius v'ashirus shelo anius min umnus v'lo ashirus min umnus ela kol lefi zchusa." So, in career counseling, I'm a career counselor. And we're going to talk a lot about careers and jobs. But let's start off like this. Parnasa from Shemai. At the same time, right, the Mishnah, Gemara, is teaching us that as parents we love our children. And we want to do the best for our children. And we would give all of our money to our children. Right? If we could, so Hashem we will, and we'll have the money to give to our children. But at the same time, as parents, we feel the responsibility. And Chazal explained the responsibility to be able to give our children the tools that they should be able to be mefarners themselves. Now, it's interesting that the lashon of the Mishnah, right, is an umnus nekia v'kala. We're going to talk a lot about that. Right? What type of umnus? So the Rishonim explain, the joke of the Jewish mother's, dream job. So what's the Jewish dream job? So umnus nekia. What's nekia? So nekia, the Mefarshim explain, is a clean profession. Okay. So some say it's clean from gezel. Right? So when the Mefarshim say that there are some jobs that if they say that if everyone would be honest, so then there wouldn't be business. So those are jobs that we don't do. Okay, that's not umnus nekia. Right, some say umnus nekia is that umnus nekia is a job that a person is mechubedeh. He doesn't get himself dirty. Right? The Jewish mother wants her son to be working in a very chashuv type of a thing. Right? At the same time, what's kala? So kala, which translates as light. So the Maharsha over there, in different explanations, explain that the goal as parents to teach our children, this is something which everyone here wants, is that on one hand we want to give our children the responsibility and we want to give our children the independence. At the same time, we want to teach them a job that's not going to absorb them. And what the Mishnah teaches here in umnus kala means is that a job that allows our children to be able to focus on their Torah learning, to be able to focus on their families, to be able to focus on living. Right? They're not focused on their work. There's the question, are you working to live, or are you living to work? And that's the dream. And the words of Chazal are incredibly important today, and this is something which we all feel. Recent research shows, fascinating, that a study was done by Adobe in America, representing Western culture, that workers reported that 78% of their waking hours they're either working or thinking about work. That's on a working day. Okay, that's about 14 hours. Do the math. Depends how much a person sleeps. Okay, but 78% of their time is thinking about their work. On a non-working day, 41% of their time is thinking about work. 53% of people that were surveyed said that they identify their whole identity with that which they're working. Their job is their life. And studies are showing that the classic 40-hour a week that we may have grown up on is becoming obsolete. And the whole trend of what's happening in the world is a world where all the researchers are saying that people are going to have multiple jobs, that people are going to be working and working and working and working. And the question is that's scary. Because as Jews, right, we've realized that work's important, right? But within the context of what we're trying to be machanech our children. So how to be melamed our children with an umnes, nikia, v'kala, how to do it, those are the golden questions. And that we're going to discuss today. Right? In order to understand how to be able to do that, we have to understand the foundations that Tzomet works on. Right? At Tzomet we like to say, work smarter, don't work harder. Right? Focus on what's going to work and not just what's done. Now why is that incredibly important? Right? So the first foundation of being able to successfully raise our children with the goals that we want to achieve with them is understanding the employment market. Right? Everyone would agree, right, that the employment market the way it is today is not what it was 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or not even 5 years ago. Right? The researchers call today's environment the VUCA environment, right? Standing for volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. It's an environment which is constantly changing. Right, because of global factors, because of technology. The classical model that we were brought up on, that a person gets a job, works for an organization, stays there, gets raised for one time in career, that's finished. They're finishing. Right? Because of all the factors that we're dealing with, right, the environment is always changing. And therefore, in order to be able to plan appropriately, we have to understand what is it that the market needs. Right? The second foundation is understanding the education system. I mentioned before, about umdas nikia bakala in terms of jobs. So the Mefarshim also explain that that's not just talking about the job, it's also talking about how to get the job. Right? There's a Meiri that says, the way that he learns it, it says that the Mishnah over there, that a person shouldn't be melamed his ben and umdas nashim, is that he should learn in separate education. From the Meiri. Right? That we want an environment, not only how the job we're going to work in, but how we're going to get the job to be in a way that preserves the values that we're trying to radiate to our children, and also that the job that the derech that we're going to go on is also something that doesn't consume them along the path. Now, in the educational world, it's constantly changing, and as in any business, right, all educational programs that are constantly growing and coming up are saying, obviously, if you come to us, so then it's going to work. But what we find, though, is an amazing statistic, is that the same percentage of people that had bachelor's degrees in 1960, now have master's degrees today. Right? The trend of just going to school, to just go to school, is growing and growing and growing. So we have over here the need to understand an educational structure in the society that we live in, and to know which education is going to get us to the goal. Because what happens often is that there is a split, and there's been a lot of talk about this, between academics and the employment world. So you have a curriculum that had been built 10 years ago, teaching people this, and then people go and they study, and then they find out that everything that they learn is not even going to get them the job. Right? So the second foundation of being able to be successful on focused, successful education is understanding the educational environment. And the third foundation is understanding the cultures that we come from. And I think that I'm going to start over there, because each one of us that come here tonight, right, each come from a different culture, right, a different background. Most of us are probably Olim. And it's important to realize that at Soma, when we sit with a client, right, if the client's 18 or the client is 45, it doesn't make a difference. The first questions we ask them is to understand about their parents, about what their parents did, what their parents studied, what their parents worked in, right? Because often we don't realize how much our own perceptions, right, as parents, our own educational experiences play out in the way that our children are going to perceive what they should be doing or what's considered to be success. Right, so the third foundation, right, on top of, we spoke about employment, we spoke about educational systems, is also understanding the culture that we're in. So these are the foundations that Somet works on. And what I'd like to discuss today briefly, we spoke about the third, we'll speak about the first two, and then we're going to have time for questions and answers. Mrs. Hannah Radner is here, who's the founder of Tzomet, Mr. Pez mentioned, and so we'll have a tremendous opportunity to be able to address our specific concerns of why we came here tonight. So let's start with the foundation of the employment market. So what's needed to get a job? Right? Is it credentials? Is it skills? Is it both? Is it neither? Right? So let's talk about the standard model, right, in terms of credentials, right, which would mean getting a bachelor's degree. Okay, something with most of us are probably familiar. So the road of getting a bachelor's degree here in Israel is different than what we may be familiar with in North America. First of all, the whole marachas of education in terms of the way that a bachelor's degree is built is different. For some of you that may not be familiar with it, so just explain, right? In America, the way college education is built is that people spend about half of their time learning a major, which is the focus of what they want to study, and about half their time learning general education or electives, which could be courses in anything. In Israel, things are focused. When a person is applying, he's not applying to the college, he's applying to a specific department. Right? Because of that, actually, in a bachelor's degree in Israel, a person will learn a lot more than they'll learn in a bachelor's degree in America. Right? You'll find that the amount of students that are going for master's degrees here in Israel is less than in America. But in America, since people are only spending some of their time on their first degree, they're going for second degrees to focus. But in Eretz Yisrael, it's different. Okay, college can be 3 years instead of 4. Okay, and the road to be able to get into college, right, is either through the bagrut, right, or through the mechina system, which we'll speak about both of them. Just before we get to that, though, we're just speaking about colleges. So, some of you may be familiar with the different colleges and universities that exist here in Israel. In terms of the options for the frum community, so what's happened is that there were the major universities, right, that were established here, and in order to be able to service the frum community, there have been open shluchot, right, extensions of the major colleges and universities that offer opportunities in certain fields for the frum community to be able to study in an environment that's comfortable for them. Okay, there are some nuances we'll get to a little bit later. Okay, but there are certain colleges that are all separate. Mechon Lev, something that some of you guys may have heard of. Okay, Mechon Lev was established to be a frum environment. All boys and all girls from its get-go. Okay, but there are opportunities, even in the major universities, to be able to study at shluchot. Which are geared and similarly in a similar model bring together a frum environment for the frum community. So the road to being able to get a college degree, okay, so basic classical was a bagrut. So we're not going to get into the details of the bagrut right now. If someone has specific questions, you can ask the question a little bit later. But what's important to understand about the bagrut is that not all bagruts are equal. Okay, sometimes it's just like, it sounds like everything's the same. It's bagrut and no bagrut. Okay, the way the bagrut is built is that there are core subjects that a person needs to do. And then there's also electives. And interesting in the bagrut system, which is different than the American high school system, is that even in high school, person has if a person's in a bagrut environment, they may have the choice to decide what they want to focus on learning already in the high school level, right, depending on what they think they might be interested in. So by the time they finish high school, they've already gathered potentially a lot of information and background in the topic. Okay, in terms of the bagrut themselves, right, the way that the bagrut work is that there are different yechidot, right, which are dependent on which are determined by difficulty. It's important if you're looking into a program that offers a bagrut to understand what is the bagrut made up of, right? For example, if there's a bagrut that's not on three, at least on a level of 3 chidot, in certain core subjects, it's not even, if it wouldn't be 3 chidot, it's not even going to work, right? And even on 3 chidot, right, if a person's looking to get into a specific school or a specific field, that's not going to be good enough also. So it's important to check the basic bagrut that's offered in some programs are good enough to be able to get into, if somebody wants to go into something like psychology or social work or something more basic. But if someone's child is the type of person that wants to go into computers, right, or physics or engineering or something more specific, more heavy math-based, so then the basic bagrut is not going to necessarily do the trick. So that's an important thing to keep in mind in terms of not just bagrut, but what is the bagrut. The second thing to keep in mind with the bagrut, and this ties into what we spoke about before, is that the bagrut is also overseen by a certain agaf, a certain branch. Now, what happens is that if the bagrut is being overseen by what would be called more of a Haredi system, okay? So in the Haredi system, so then what happens is that the person who finishes that is classified by the government as someone who's Haredi, which means, right, in this instance, what that means is that that person has the ability to study at the shluchot that we spoke about that are called Haredi shluchot. Meaning that the government has the universities and they've created these branches, these shluchot, so that people that are not willing or able to study at the regular university are going to attend. However, anyone who can go to the regular university is not allowed to study at the shluchot. So what happens is if if we study in a bagrut system which is not considered called to be Haredi, what will happen is that that student will not be able to study in a more of a firm environment eventually. Right? So there's something also when looking to your program, right, to consider who's the people who are being mefakech on the bagrut. Okay, there are programs that even if a person would not be in a Haredi bagrut system can attend. Like for Machon Lev is one example, Kiryat Ono is another example. Okay, so there are opportunities. It doesn't mean that a person can't continue in separate education or more of a firm environment, but those options are more limited, and there are also additional limitations in terms of funding, because once again, when it comes to funding for school, the government allocates significant amounts of money for helping, once again, what they call the Haredi population, or to be able to learn in an educational system. So the way they classify it is one way is who oversaw your bagrut. So that's something which, if you know where you want to end up, you want to keep that in mind when you're looking into school. Okay, the second option that we spoke about in terms of getting into college if you're seeking a degree is mechina. So mechina is an alternative that allows someone that have not done the bagrut, and then they spend generally 1 year in the program, making themselves ready to be able to go into the college. So it's specific. So let's say, for example, somebody wanted to go into computers and they didn't do a bagrut, so then when they would be accepted, if they would be accepted to a mechina, they would spend 1 year in which they would learn the basics, right, English, math, what they need, but they would be focusing all their time to build up the levels of what they need. Okay, so there is a level, so it may sound, mechina sounds great, like why not? So maybe yes, maybe not. So the important things to know about mechina is the following. First of all, you have to get into mechina. Okay? In order to be able to get into mechina, there's a test called the Maimad. Okay, the Maimad tests general abilities in English, math, and logical thinking. Okay, so if someone wouldn't be at all prepared, right, so then they wouldn't even be able to get into mechina. And the second point, right, is that 50% of people that join mechina don't make it. Okay, so the mechina system, why don't they make it? So the answer is because they're not prepared. Okay, so the mechina system was created in order to facilitate people that didn't get the Sodi backgrounds through the younger years. At the same time, it does have its limitations, and it's something to keep in mind. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Right? Is that sometimes the short road, the short long road. It sounds great, right? But it may not work, and it could work for some people. Part of it also is making sure that the students in the right mechina, right? Because mechina is very focused on a specific topic. You can have a situation where a student could be very capable and smart, but he wasn't guided properly and he went to the wrong mechina program and then he didn't succeed. Okay, and then there's also things that we can do as parents if we're going to go through the mechina route to be able to prepare our children so that they be able to succeed in getting into mechina and also making it work. So that's a bit about the path of going through. Well, there's some questions of that. The path of a degree. Now, there's a different track, okay, which is going through the track of certificates. Okay, so because either we'll talk about this in a second, because either getting a degree is not for everyone, or people don't want to invest the time. So there is a tremendous shul, right, of certificates that have been created to offer students and adults to be able to get specific skills that can then be used to work in the employment market. So there are different types of certificates. Obviously, we can't speak about all of them now, but bigadol, there are regular tudot, and then there is also a higher level of a certificate, which we would call more of an associate's degree, okay, which allows a person to be able to work on a higher level, not quite like a bachelor's. We'll speak about that in a second. The difference between whether going through this associate's track or through the tudat track is that the certificate requirements to get in, more or less everyone can get in. Or if you can't get in, they'll very much help a person to be able to get in. So as opposed to going through college where you have over here, either the bagrut or the mechina. I didn't mention before, but I should mention that in addition to completing the bagrut and the mechina, there's also an exam. So if the first person's going to a university, it would be the psychometry. If someone's going to college, it would be the teal. Okay, these are exams that test people's capabilities. So in addition to having to succeed in either bagrut or mechina, a person would have to make sure that they're on the level of English, math, logical thinking to be able to succeed. When it comes to tudot, that doesn't exist. Okay, so the barriers of entry into tudot are less. Okay, so it seems once again sounds great. So is it great? So once again, it depends. So I'd like to outline 4 different areas of tudot to see how it matches up compared to going through a different track. So the classical certificate you may think of, which really tudot are great for, is for fields that really college doesn't help for. Okay, so let's just say, for example, if someone is good with their hands and they're very talented at fixing things, right? They can be very bright, and that's the way that they express themselves. They're going to work as in appliance repair. They're going to work in shiputzim, or not just gardening, but not just those things. But even if, let's say, for example, this is so for girls, it could be working in cosmetics and makeup. Right? Take a student like that and put them in a route where they're going to have to go to college and earn a degree. Right? Not just would be a waste of time, but in many situations counterproductive. So, right, for those types of fields, graphic design is another one. Right? Something a person can just learn a certificate and get the skills and be able to work in it. So there, it's great. And it's something that a person would do as career counselors once evaluating a person and their strengths and seeing that that's where their most success could be. That's where we would encourage people to go to. An interesting one that Tzomet is, as Rav Ari mentioned, is Tzomet involved in coming up with solutions that work for the firm community. So one of the initiatives that we offer are creating specific training courses and certificates that give clients the skills that they need to get a job and are already interlocked with the industry so that there's guaranteed placement. Okay, so we've worked together with schools that offer the certificate that are also connected to the companies or the different government agencies that are looking for people to fill those roles. Okay, one interesting, exciting one that's just come up is hydrotherapy. Okay, hydrotherapy, for those of you that don't know, is involved in different exercises in the water. So in order to work as a certified hydrotherapist, okay, so it's a certificate. And if somebody likes working in the water, they like helping people, they're into health, it's a certificate. A person could learn it in a year, and then they can work, and they can work mitam the kupat cholim. Great, chaval to send a person like that to study in college if it's not even going to help him. Okay, so there are certificates, and what we're as SOMET trying to do is to hone in on those specific certificates that are really the best option for clients so they're able to find work. But that's sug echad of certificates, that's really the best way to go. The second type of certificate would be certificates that are skill specific. Okay, that give people the skills that they need, and with those skills, a person could work. At the same time, if a person had a degree, it would put them in a different standing. So, examples of this might be there are certificates for a person to work in insurance. Okay, a person can get a certificate in insurance, he can get a license, he can work in insurance. If a person went and he studied business, and he studied finance, and he had a degree in finance, and he was involved in insurance, that would definitely help him. At the same time, right, learning a certificate and getting the specific skills that are needed in insurance would definitely help a person. Digital marketing is something which is up and coming. It's also a program that we're developing where a person could study digital marketing, learn the specific skills, and it's interesting is that companies report that you have people that went to college and they don't know the skills that they need to work, right? Because like we said before, is that often there's this gap between academics and employment. So the person that went to college is trying to get the job, he has a degree, but he doesn't know what's up and running. So an advantage of certificates is that the certificates are most on the ball of seeing what's exactly needed and honing in and giving people specific skills. So the second type, coding, let's give an example over here. Someone can learn coding, it would be great, and there are certificates and a person can get a job. If someone had a degree in computers, it would be better. Okay, so that's the second type of certificate. I would say where college is not a bad option, okay, but the certificate has a value. The third type of certificate, classification would be certificates that provide real opportunities, but they're limited by, I would say, outside circumstances. So like a great one, which is very relevant for anyone that likes working with people, or sees their kids working with people, is the field of social work and psychology and therapy. Okay, so there's certificates opening up all the time with all different types of trainings and this type of therapy and that type of therapy, right? Working with youth at risk, marriage counseling, you name it, they've made it. And these certificates, what they've done is that they said, hey, we know the skills that people need. Okay, and we're working with, often at CBOR, these have been created a lot for the Haredi community, which is not going to go to college. So if we can bring all the professionals and give people the skills that they need and be able to give them the experience that they need, so then we can offer a certificate, and great. What's the limitation? The limitation is that if someone wants to work in a government system, someone wants to be able to work, the school system. So there, the key to the door is degree, right? So if somebody wants to be able to work as a social worker, he has to get a degree in social work. However, if a person's goal is to open up private practice, it could be that the certificate's great, right? And he doesn't need anything else. So it requires an awareness of knowing, what's my ultimate goal, to know whether or not the certificate's going to accomplish it or whether or not I need to go the degree route. Okay, and another example that plays out between the associates and the bachelors, right, is that the associates will, let's say for example in architecture, so it will give a person the ability to be able to work on some building structures, but it will limit them at a certain level and not allow them to be able to advance more. Okay, so that's on associates. The bachelors, just to come full circle, the certificate for interior design, that's not going to allow a person to work on that level at all. It will allow a person to work as an interior designer. Okay, so each one has its value, and once again, to be able to determine, it really depends on what we're seeking to be able to accomplish. The last type, I'd say is where certificates just don't help. There are certain fields that generally they hopefully don't make certificates for these things, that they're not going to help them at all. Okay, but it's always important to check, right? That it may sound nice, okay, but it's not mukar b'shuk. It's just like you come with a certificate, no one's going to look at you. Okay, so that's why it's always important to get guidance to understand if you're going to go the certificate route, right? To know whether it's appropriate for the person and what the real value is going to be. Okay, so we spoke about degrees, right? We spoke about bagrut, we spoke about mechina, we spoke about certificate, right? So the question is what path, is right for us? How do we figure that? How do we figure out that path for our child? It started with I think the end of Kiddushin. So I think that there's a beautiful idea, right? The Torah teaches us how to get to this answer. So earlier on in Kiddushin, where actually we're taught about teaching our children on this. So on the Daf Lamed, they ask, where do we learn out that a father should teach his son a trade? So Chizkiah Amar Kra Reichai Mima'isha Asher Ahavta. Right, there's a pasuk from Koheles, and the Gemara is Dorish Kishem Shechayev Lasio Isha Kach Chayev L'Lamda Umnus. Im Torah Hi Kishem Shechayev L'Lamda Torah Kach Chayev L'Lamda Umnus. So it's quite fascinating here is that if you look at this pasuk Re'ei Chaim Mima'isha, so the Gemara is Dorish that Chaim means Parnasa. Re'ei Chaim is a trade. Ima Isha Asher Ahavta. So what's Isha? So the Gemara says two approaches. Either we say Isha is a wife, and then therefore just like a father needs to marry off his sons to a wife, he also needs to teach his son a trade. The other option is that Isha is Torah. Right? Torah is called Isha in other places as well, and therefore just like a father needs to teach his son Torah, he needs to teach his son a trade. So the Maharal in Baba Kama has a fascinating insight. And there in Baba Kama, the Gemara says that a person who's yored into the umnus of his chaver, the person that goes into the trade of his friend inappropriately, so Chazal say the following: right, that a person who goes into the umnus of a friend, so it's as if he was being unfaithful with his friend's spouse. The Gemara says above a kam. So the Maharal says, what do we see over here? Right, we see over here that a person's umnus is also called Isha. So we have on one hand Torah is called Isha. We have on the other hand Isha is called Isha. And we have also an umnus is called an Isha. So the Maharal says there in the Chiddushei Agadis, he says, "Shekol davar she'adam mistabek elav hein," that's called an Isha to him. So therefore, an Isha, a person has a connection with his wife. Hopefully we have a connection with our Torah, right? And a person's umnus is something that a person has a deep connection to. It's interesting that in Shabbos, that when it speaks about what we're allowed to do on Shabbos, so the Gemara in Shabbos says, right, that there's Gemara in Shabbos says, it's brought down the halacha as well, but Tani Debei Menashe, that we can be meshadich. What can we do on Shabbos? We can be meshadich our banos, right, make shidduchim. The tinuk l'lamdei sefer, we can be meshadich them to someone to teach them Torah. And also the lamda umnus, meshadich them to someone to teach them umnus. Also again, Torah, Isha, umnus, and shidduchim. What's the connection? So if I was here talking about shidduchim tonight, which I'm not, and everyone was sitting here and they were saying, okay, so tell me who, so you would say to me, okay, Rabbi Broker, tell me who my son should marry. So if I tried to answer that question without asking you a question first, so then I probably shouldn't be standing here. Well, I'm not a shadchan anyways. But I can't answer who your son should marry. I need to ask you a question. Tell me about your son. Right? In order to be able to understand who a person's spouse is, you have to be able to understand who the person is. What's the person's teva? What's the person like? What type of wife does he need? What are his kochos? What are his chisronos? Right? How does he interact with other people? Once I understand the person, so then I can think about being meshadich, and that's why we have a shadchan, right? To help. You have an objective opinion of how to be able to connect that person with a spouse. The same thing with Torah, right? And often I was involved in chinuch for years, right? You could have a person that may grow up and he says, Torah is not for me. I mean, Torah is not for him. The Torah that he was exposed to is not for him. right? Because for that person, right, what he was learning wasn't something that he was misdabbing to, right? So if we want to be able to understand the nefesh of the Talmud, right, we have to be able to understand who he is, and then understand his very nature, and then find that aspect of Torah that he could connect to. And the same thing comes to when trying to teach a trade to our children. In order to be able to understand what path to go on, right? So, go there, it sounds overwhelming. There's so many different ways. Right? It starts with understanding the child. I can't tell you, examples that I've had, sitting with clients, different ages, and it didn't just happen once or twice, where the guy tells me, I don't know, I dropped out of school, I wasn't really, I bounced around, I got a GED, I don't really, think school's for me, I don't know really what's going to be for me. But you know what really came out, right, was that what he was learning in school wasn't for him. And it's fascinating is that in career counseling, theory of the 6 work environments and work personalities, the classical school model only addresses between 2 and 3 of them. Which means that you can have a student, right, who would be the best businessman. He's going to be the top, fix-it guy. He's going to be the best social worker. He's going to be the person who's teaching art therapy and is going to make the biggest difference in the world. And he's not going to do well in a school, which is mainly focused on math and science. So, and what we do in counseling is help the person realize what their talents are and help them realize that it's not a matter of not being successful, it's a matter of understanding how you can be successful. So to answer the question on what path to take, the answer really is the best path to take is a path in which at least us as parents, and perhaps the school, depending on what school you're going to choose, understands that each child is different and pays attention to the nuances in that learning style in the classroom. And it could even be the learning style in the Shir and Gemara. Because if a person's in tune, he realizes is that same thing, which is that reason why he's not connecting with that sugya, is the same reason why he's not connected to that math problem. And he realizes the same reason why he connects to the Musar could be the same reason why he's really excited when there's an event that they're organizing, but that's not really considered to be chashuv. So the environment that we put our children in, right, with people that are looking out for them, that understand our children, understand that there are different types of intelligence, and there are different types of strengths, and is able to focus in on that and then provide that environment which is going to facilitate our children to grow and to feel successful and to be successful as they are, that's the best path. Because unfortunately what can happen is that a person can go through school and can, in the worst case scenario, feel himself as being a failure. And he's totally not a failure, but he'll actually view himself as a failure only because the environment that he was in, right, and it wasn't made for him. So before I sum up, and then we'll have questions, I just want to point out one other area that as parents, irrelevant to whatever system we're going to send our kids through, we can empower our children for success. So recent studies show something also very fascinating, is that I think 87% of graduates think that they're ready for the workforce. I think only around 50% of the employers actually think that they are. And it's something which is being studied, and it's very fascinating, all the different theories of why this has happened. But there are core competencies, right, research papers that have been written, like the core competencies that are needed in the 21st century that people are not getting in school. And you know what they are? Anyone take a guess?
Computer skills. Computer skills?
Computer skills, okay.
People skills.
Okay. Okay, computer. Okay. Practical. Right. Okay. So, what was the last thing you said?
Common sense.
Common sense. So it seems funny, okay? Maybe I'll just I'll tell the story just from my Rabbi, just because he said my Rabbi Moshe Weinberger said a story that one time he brought his son to a big tzaddik, and he wanted a bracha for it, and he was expecting the big bracha. He should be kind of chacham, and he's like, you should be a mensch. You should be normal. And Rabbi Weinberger said, like, I only now appreciate, like, what that bracha was. So, like, common sense, we would think, like, you're right. Because what the studies show is what's lacking? Communication skills. Badly. The ability to be able to write, right? Which the researchers are showing because of everything that's going on with technology, right? If people just text instead of writing emails. And as some we've sat with employers that have reported this, that people can't write. They just not able to write. Public speaking, right? Not having social anxiety, being able to face people, right? Integrity, responsibility. These are the competencies that is coming out of the research that managers that come from the old generation are saying we can't find them in all the college graduates. Teamwork. What's so important for us to realize as parents is that all of these competencies, which are called soft skills in employment world, these are things that we can teach to our kids in our homes, right? When they're learning Kodesh. And by preparing our kids with these skills, we are giving them the skills that are needed in order for them to succeed in our future, right? So, I think that we've learned a lot today, but whatever path you're going to choose, which requires careful guidance and a careful understanding of your child, right? To realize that whatever that path is going to be, that we can empower our children by giving them these skills. And finally, if we're going to go in a path that's going to say mechinas for me, maybe mechina, maybe certificates, it's so crucial to work with our children to give them the basic skills that they need. Because the reason why people are not making it in mechina is because, if you've ever crammed for a test, I don't know if you did, but there's some things you could cram for a test and some things you can't, right? English, math, the things that require time, right? And that's why generally they're taught over years, because it needs to build, and it needs to build. And therefore, even if it's not being taught in the school system that we go through, if we work with our children on the side through enrichment programs, it's actually an idea that Tzvi is looking to launch professional enrichment programs that will help parents to be able to give their kids skills that are going to lead to something. So that's also something that we can also do with our kids. So I think that if we work with all that we've spoken today, then we'll, of course, with a lot of siyata d'shmaya, like we saw in the beginning, and a lot of tefillah, we'll be matzliach in being able to give over to our children that umnus nikia v'kala. And just to end, which is I thought I heard that my Rabbi as well, very powerful, so pashut, but the word umnus. So there's a Rashi in Azinu that is talking about speaking about the last generation. And it's a door that there's no omen ba. So Rashi says two different explanations. He says what is the lashon of omen? So one we know from the is emunah, okay, belief, and the other one we know from the Megillah, right? That Mordechai was omen as Hadassah, right? That he was nurtured Hadassah, and that he brought up Hadassah. So the word umnus really means is that when we have the belief in those natural qualities that our children have, right? We have that emunah, and we're able through that emunah to be omen, to be able to bring out those skills that our kids have. That's all actually included in the word umnus. That's what Chazal call a trait, an umnus, right? Because that's the key of being able to be successful in preparing our children for the future.